not a, in Hegel, right, thesis, antithesis, the synthesis, right? And whatever that is. What is it? Well, because Hegel has these opposite ideas that synthesize, right? Like subject, object will synthesize on a higher level. That's where they got, that's how Hegel got social consciousness? I don't know how did he get that? Well, that would be too simple to say, but in one sense, Hegel got the social consciousness from the synthesis of individual subject and object. So because that became self-consciousness, so that's self-consciousness. Individual subject, object perception, self-consciousness is like the synthesis. But then thinking about other people are also other self-consciousness of people, like you guys, right? You're also self-consciousness, I am also self-consciousness. And then that's somehow synthesized and a social consciousness, maybe. Sort of. Anyway, okay, so Hegel has that. All these guys don't want that, right, as we know. Okay, I'm not sure about Lacan, but maybe. I sometimes think Lacan is more traditional in some way. Okay, but I'm not sure. Maybe also Lacan. Anyway, Derrida, Deleuze, Foucault, I guess so. Derrida, Deleuze, Foucault, and maybe Lacan. Anyway, they all want some kind of difference, not this negation thing, right? Okay, so not this, because this is this oppositional, right? Because this is just oppositional thinking, right? This is this oppositional thinking, A, not A, and okay, Nietzsche, truth and opposite, faith and opposite values. He talked about beyond good and evil. At the beginning, he said that metaphysics always has the faith in opposite values, right? And that stuff, but we do not want that, right? Okay, anyway, why do I mention? Because then he said a critique of philosophy as an active indifference to difference. Oh, I see. He is saying philosophy is that. Oh, okay. I thought he was saying his critique was that. Oh, okay. All of Nietzsche's thought is a critique of philosophy as the system of, I don't know what that means, a-di-aphoristic. Aphoristic is the short statement. A-di-aphoristic. Oh my God. Not the short statement. I should have checked that out, but I can guess, but I'm not sure. As the system of reduction or repression. Okay, because philosophy is a system of reduction or repression, right? Therefore, philosophy is an indifference to difference. Oh, okay. I see, so it makes sense. Because philosophy is this one, but these guys want this, right? Okay. I was going to say that was ambiguous to say like that. I got confused by the because. Okay, anyway, but actually his book is not so easy. Actually, his book is not too bad for you guys. It's slightly hard, but it's not so hard, right? He's still trying to explain. He's basically just trying to explain the main points. In that respect, it's good. Okay, he quotes quite a lot from the original text. That point is good. In another way, it is slightly hard, of course. And he kind of jumps kind of fast. But it's also not too bad. Okay, so the thing is, what? Oh, yeah, okay. Anyway, what I would like to suggest. Okay, the deconstructive genre. Okay, what I would like to suggest, Nietzsche anticipates not only the general outline of his deconstructive critique, rather, if we attend to the details of Nietzsche's own thinking, we can see what sounds through the same critique of oppositional thinking anticipated in his assessment of traditional values. Right. As or because he proceeds by disassembling the privileged hierarchical relation that has been established. Right. So this whole thing of this, the assessment of traditional values proceeds by kind of breaking down the hierarchical order. Therefore, basically, it's a critique of oppositional thinking, right? That's one reason why Nietzsche. It is critiquing oppositional thinking because he's breaking down the hierarchy. That's right. Yeah. Okay, like Derridean deconstruction, Nietzsche's disassembling kind of, because it's like deconstruct, right? Disassemble, right? Take apart. But he doesn't just want to say deconstructive, so he says disassembling, right? Nietzsche's disassembling or kind of taking apart, like deconstructing. This operates in two phases. The first phase overturns. Now, at this point we know. Now, this is all stuff that I talked about in the first class, actually. So actually in the second class we could go through it. Remember in the first class, okay, the truth is a woman. Truth is a woman, but then we have absolute truth, relative truth. But then we cannot just put the woman, okay, woman as relative truth. man as absolute truth. But he doesn't want to just turn it around, put relative truth above absolute truth, but rather they want to break down, Nietzsche and Derrida, right? Rather to break down the difference, or break down the hierarchy. Okay, and then in this, I mentioned in the first class. In the second class, we went into beyond good and evil at the beginning of it, about opposite values, faith and opposite values, I think so. See, this stuff is all that stuff. Maybe now, if I use this book again in the future, I might just, it would make more sense to immediately go to this in the third class, maybe, right? It might make more sense. Anyway, because I'm stupid enough. That's okay, because I just wanted to give you more Nietzsche in the beginning, right? Okay, so, okay, like their idea of deconstruction, this operates, okay, the first phase overturns the traditionally privileged relation between the two values, such as one over the other, such as man above woman, rational above emotional, or whatever, right? Sisu, transfeminism. Traditional value, rational above emotional, man above woman, for example, heaven above earth or something. Okay, the thing, okay, then the second one, the second phase, okay, the first phase just will invert, right? To an overturn, to invert. So put woman above man, earth above heaven, man, body above the mind, right? Body above soul, right? Things like that, for example. Right? Okay, but then the second phase is to displace the opposition altogether by showing that the result, now here's the key point, right? By showing the opposition to result from a prior value imposition, which itself requires critique, right? Because Nietzsche keeps going back, back, right? We need to still question that value, because why you put heaven above earth, or why you put earth above heaven, right? Or why you would put man above woman, or rational above emotional, or why you would put woman above man, or emotion above rational, right? Or body above mind. Either way, why do we do that? There's some value back behind, right? That would make that distinction in the first place, maybe, right? I mean, I'm also not sure, but there's some value back behind that would. The problem is, why would we distinguish them in the first place, right? Like body and mind. That might be the problem. Anyway, so then we go back to question the distinction anyway, right? That's the thing. Okay, for example, regarding, okay, but they will still make that distinction. They won't say there's no distinction. A over B, B over A. They won't just say A equals B, maybe. But they will question that, why are we doing that? Okay, then, for example, regarding the genealogy of will to truth, see, in the second class we talked about it. That's the beginning of beyond good and evil. Nietzsche said, why do we have to will to truth? Why do we want to know why? Why not rather know what is not true, right? But then he said, what is true, or what we think is true, it's just because it has a value for life, for survival. And that's stuff, right? Okay, so anyway, okay, then he said, regarding the genealogy of the will to truth, you find Nietzsche inverting traditional hierarchy, a true over false, because he breaks down the distinction of what is true, what is false. Okay, investigating the origin of the positive value of truth, Nietzsche finds it's a moral prejudice to affirm truth over error, or truth over appearance. See, actually, okay, that's a moral prejudice. Okay, this was partly from the first class, the second class, Beyond Good and Evil. But we didn't get to the moral thing. The moral thing came out in the third class. The moral, the group morality of the herd instinct in the individual. But I think I never really explained that stuff, and I may or may not. Okay, now the thing is because, truth has two opposites then. Okay, true over false. Okay, truth over falsity or error, right? Falsity or like error, wrong, right? It's wrong. Or truth over appearance. Because what appears. Because we tend to think like the inner truth. That's the traditional idea, right? Traditional idea, the inner truth, but the outside appearance. On the outside, it appears to be such and such, but inwardly, the true meaning, right, the inner truth, maybe it's kind of inner outer. Right? Therefore, we think the soul or the mind is inside, right? The true beauty of the soul. Shakespeare, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art my lovely haunting walk. So what for love him? for rough winds to shake the darling buds of May and I forgot. Okay, so Shakespeare, these guys, John Donne, or these guys, Sidney Spencer, Shakespeare, and maybe John Donne. Donne is slightly different. Okay, these guys, it's always just immediate, divine, eternal beauty. The woman has eternal beauty even she's old, right? But that's because it's inner, maybe, right? But the outer appearance, she gets old and ugly, right? Eternal beauty, that's all Plato, that's tradition of Plato. Okay, so that's like Shakespeare's sonnets and this dualities, right? Okay, then what about this thing? Oh yeah, right, okay, right. Okay, investigating the origin of the positive value of truth. Okay, it's a moral prejudice. Now, why does he say that? A moral prejudice to put truth above error or truth above appearance. Okay, why? Morality is the herd instinct in the individual. The herd, the group instinct, the group consciousness, because they want to try to survive, though, I thought it's also to survive, though. Power. Morality is power, the power structure, but also for survival. Okay, I'll do it later. I'm also not sure. Okay, so moral instinct to do that. See, I often try to figure that stuff out. I should just do that. Okay, now the thing is, I often try to predict what will be the reason for something, and then I won't read it. But that's a bad habit, maybe. Okay, then. Okay, yeah, what did he say? Or to this he suggests that error might be more valuable than truth, that error might be a necessary condition of life. Actually, that's very ambiguous in Beyond Good and Evil. Actually, he finally does not really distinguish what is true and what is false. Actually, he says, like 1 + 1 is 2, like logic might actually be false, but it's important for survival. So we call it true, right, or something like that. Actually, the original thing is very ambiguous, right, and paradoxical. So here he makes it very clear, but actually when you read Nietzsche, it's not so clear, right? Because in Nietzsche, in the Beyond Good and Evil, he actually says 1 + 1 is 2, A equals A. Logical things, they might actually be false, but it has a value for life. So therefore, in a sense, we say it's true, right? So what does that mean? There is no true and false, it's the same thing. Cannot distinguish it, right? Okay, so anyway, then he said, well, okay, he suggests error might be more valuable than truth, that error might be necessary. His analysis does not stop, as Heidegger assumed when he accused Nietzsche of completing the history of metaphysics to inversion of Platonism, right? Because we cannot simply invert Plato. We cannot simply say, put the appearance above the truth, put the false thing above the truth. By adopting a perspectival attitude, denying the possibility of unmediated, non-interpretive apprehension of reality, Nietzsche displaces the true-false opposition. Now, what does it mean to displace? I don't know what that means. It doesn't mean that you just say true equals false, right? You could mean that, though, right? What does it mean to displace it? See? Does it just say true equals false? We cannot distinguish. What does it mean? Okay, it displaces it. The question is no longer whether a perspective is true or false. The question that interests Nietzsche is whether or not a perspective enhances life. Right. So that was in the second class that we talked about that stuff. See, again, what does it, I never quite know what they mean when they say genealogy, okay. I assume from Nietzsche, because genealogy of morals, okay. I assume genealogy in Nietzsche means you're looking for, he's emphasizing the etymology of words. Okay, the history of the use of language, and etymology and uses of words, and the history of the changing meaning of words and stuff like that. Okay, but so genealogy, as far as I can see, it has the idea there is no absolute origin, right? Because everything is from history. History has no absolute origin. But we are just looking at this changing use of things. Okay, so that's like Foucault in a way, right? In some way, right? The changing, but it's based on the changing power structure. The changing power structure through history, which will determine the use of words and stuff. Okay, but Nietzsche and the genealogy of morals, he's often emphasizing the use of words, the use of language, which can change depending on who's in power. Anyway, right? Now, as far as I know, Foucault has archaeology and genealogy. Right? Okay, Foucault is interested in, It's the changing episteme, which is the knowledge, right? And Foucault, the episteme, the structure of knowledge or something, but that can kind of change because power, knowledge. Because knowledge is power, so what is considered knowledge can change because it's based on power or something. Okay, but Foucault, but Nietzsche will emphasize more specific words, the use of language, etymology. Etymology, which Heidegger also emphasized etymology, the use of words, the actual original meaning of words, right? And how it can change. Okay, whereas I didn't think Foucault will do that quite as much, just the word. Okay, but anyway, I don't know, in case you are wondering what the word means, I'm never really sure what they mean by this word, by the way. Okay, the sole question that interests him as a genealogist is whether or not, okay, why would that be genealogy though? Because that's like anthropology, right? Why is that genealogy? I don't know. And just in case you wonder about that stuff, okay, I also never know. Okay, I would think that's anthropology, but for life, right? Like ancient ape men. And then it helps us to survive. Darwin. Okay, anthropology, so why is that a genealogy? So if you study anthropology, that's also genealogy then, based on that. See, either he's using it to include that idea, right? Okay, so I don't know, but I don't think Foucault talks about ancient ape men so much, right? But maybe sometimes he does, but he won't mainly talk about it. Okay, in any case, okay, Nietzsche discovers a certain phase and binary thinking at the center of the discourse. Okay, now that's the same as Derrida and all these guys now will do that. Okay, by genealogically uncovering, again, so, well, if you're actually in the genealogy of morals, it's especially by looking at the use of language. It's part, okay, his genealogy is part of anthropology. It's part of that speculative anthropology. That he is kind of thinking what would have been the early human society, based on power and stuff like that. But it's more of his own idea, not so much based on actual anthropology, right? And just like they criticize Foucault, they say Foucault doesn't really know history and stuff like that. Historians will criticize Foucault, right? But it's like his speculation, right? Anyway, okay, but it's Nietzsche's genealogy is partly like anthropology, and it's partly etymology of words, the changing use of words, something like that. I don't know. Anyway, by genealogically uncovering the will to power, whose imposition of a certain value gave rise to the two poles of the opposition in question, because it's based on power. Genealogy obviates the force, the kind of obviates, shit, I forgot what the word means, what does that mean? Genealogy obviates the force the opposition is believed to have, well, it takes away somehow, right? I think so. Kind of lays bare, or kind of like takes away, isn't that what it means? Reduces the force. It shows you that actually there's no real opposition there, right? I think so. There's no real opposition. Okay, the clearest example of this strategy is his deconstruction of good evil. Okay, now that's in the thing I gave you. Okay, so later we can look at it, but I just thought delayed to do that. We can look at that from Beyond Good and Evil and genealogy of moral conduct, right? Maybe later with it. Okay, so, okay, good, evil. Okay, Nietzsche moves beyond good and evil precisely by showing both good and evil owe their meaning to a certain type of will to power. The slavish, reactive will to power of herd morality. Now, this is the stuff like in the third class we talked about, consciousness stuff, social consciousness. To simply invert the values of slave morality, making good what the slave judges to be evil, is no less reactive than the original imposition of value by the slave. The judge is found that differs from himself to be evil, and defines the good in reactionary opposition to what is other than himself. Now, he didn't really explain that, but that's kind of the main, it's kind of summarizing. We could go to that. Well, okay, as far as I remember now, I'm tempted to go to the genealogy of wealth, but it doesn't really explain it. But Schrift's thing is good because he just kind of summarizes the main thing. So let me consider which way he means. Well, okay, I mentioned this a while ago. I mentioned this a few weeks ago, right? Okay, basically, he has this near the end of Beyond Good and Evil, right? Beyond Good and Evil, near the end of it, the third part or something. Then he has this in Genealogy of Morals, okay, Genealogy of Morals. He has this thing that I mentioned it before. See, as far as I can understand it, master morality is kind of this overflowing energy or power, right? That would be one way to explain it. This overflowing Okay, but the slave morality is the reaction against slave. But then, okay, it's based on reaction, and then he uses this word ressentiment. Okay, Deleuze, not only Deleuze, but many people talk about resentment or ressentiment. Ressentiment literally means to re-feeling or feeling again, right? Literally. And it's based on revenge. Okay, and Deleuze in his book he emphasized the spirit of revenge. Okay, anyway, it's a reaction, it's a revenge, it's related to guilt and resentment. So this whole issue is very complicated. But I think when you look at it in terms of Freud and guilt and resentment, then I think you're looking at it as one person, and then it's repressed into your unconscious or something. I think, but I'm not sure. Okay, anyway, but forget about that. Okay, master morality, slave morality is a reaction against. Now, because as far as I can remember, how they define good and bad. Because the master just says good is weak. Good is what is noble. Because the master says, I am the strong warrior. Because these are like primitive ape men, or primitive men, maybe not ape men. Maybe they stand fully upright, you know. Okay, ancient men, Achilles or something like that, Achilles, Agamemnon. These ancient warriors, and they're kind of the nobility, aristocratic. Because nobility just means you're powerful. Nietzsche might basically say, what is aristocratic, what is noble? You are stronger than the other guys. You're a brave fighter. You're a strong fighter and very brave, courageous, and maybe you will honor obey the commander, right? Or honor the code of war, warriors, right? The honor and all that stuff, it's like ancient warriors. And what is noble just is that, right? And then they say, that's good. We noble guys, we are good. And then the other guys who are not us, they are bad. They are too low, they are low. They are not so brave, they are not so strong. So we are good, those guys are bad. That's the master's valuation. But then the slave said, we are good, and these guys are evil because they control us, right? So Nietzsche at one point in the genealogy, I think it is, at one point has good, bad is the master's point of view, but good and evil is the slave's point of view. And anyway, but that's a reaction against, okay? He's basically going to say Christianity came from this, right? Christianity came from this and different things. But what about the whole problem of guilt and resentment in psychology? And when they start talking about that stuff, when Deleuze is also talking about that stuff, and then I'm not sure, but in one sense we're looking at it as one psychic economy, maybe. You know, and then repression, right, again, psychic economy. So that will be one of the issues. Okay, but anyway, so see, well, what did he say here? Because he said sort of quickly, right? But okay, now what did he say? I'm going to try to control myself in this bit of thing. Okay, the clearest example is the of the good and evil. See, but there's good, bad, and there's good, evil. Okay, anyway. Okay, the good, evil opposition. Nietzsche moves beyond good and evil, precisely by showing that both good and evil owe their meaning to a certain type of will to power, the slavish, reactive will to power. Okay, so he is taking the second one. But here he's just mentioning, he didn't mention that originally there's good, bad, from the master's point of view, right? So he's taking the beginning from the reaction. Now, why this reaction of the slave morality? Well, these guys are not the strong fighters, right? They're not the strong, okay, but why their reaction is also the herd morality, because that's part of Nietzsche's whole theory, right? In the genealogy of morals, okay? Part of his whole anthropological theory is these guys became a society, right? The masters are this kind of like, in a sense, they are these individual guys who go down each other, not just primitive instinct, right? Because they represent the primitive instinct. They don't care about this stuff. But it's just the slave morality becomes the society. So the social consciousness, see, he has that somehow related to this, right? That these guys develop that social consciousness and therefore morality, right? Okay, anyway, the slavish reactive will, the power of herd morality. See, but the original master also has will to power, right? The original master has the overflowing will to power, right? In the beginning, right? Then everything else is the opposite force. Because that's just like Deleuze will say active and reactive force, right? The original master power is the active force. The other one, the other way, is the reactive, right? Deleuze has active and reactive force. So he's just talking about the reactive force here, by the way. So he might be confused. Anyway, okay, so this thing, certain times the slavish reactive will, the power of the herd morality, they simply invert the power of the slave morality, making good what the slave judges to be evil. is no less reactive. So he kind of jumped over to come to this point. Okay, but that's okay. Okay, it's no less reactive than the original imposition of value by the slave, who judges all that differs from himself to be evil. Oh, okay. Oh, those guys are evil because they're different from me. Oh, okay. I thought it's because also they control us. I think originally it's because they control us. But later on there's no more masters and it's just a society. Maybe, right? And then who is different from us. Maybe, right. Right. Okay, anyway. And this guy, the slave, and the slave defines the good in reactionary opposition. Well, okay, Tripp kind of jumped kind of quickly there. There's many issues there, he kind of jumped quickly, but okay, later we can go back, okay. He said a reading of Nietzsche as an immoralist or a nihilist remains at this level of mere inversion. Actually, Tripp is really good, he jumps really fast though. He's a very smart guy, kind of brilliant guy, right? So in one way the book will be hard because he's hitting on these very important points. He's going to kill, he's going down really fast, right? But you guys know that, right? I'm not sure. In a few minutes we could go and look at that thing. Okay, meow. See, his point here is really good. His point here was very good where he said to simply invert the values of slave morality, making good what the slave thinks is evil, that's also a reactive thing. So he's going back to his original point, you cannot just invert. Isn't this two different things? Oh God. Okay, like I said before, like we put man over woman, for example, whatever. We put body over soul over body, or whatever. Traditional Western things and stuff. Okay, but if you just invert it, right? If you just put body above soul, or whatever, that's also another form of reactive or oppositional thinking. So he's relating all this stuff to oppositional thinking, right? Right. The key point is, in Nietzsche, the original master of morality is not oppositional thinking. The original thing is just this overflowing power, right? Overflowing energy, which itself is like a difference or something like that. It's a self-differentiating energy, but it's not just oppositional. Anyway, you kind of jumped. Actually, Tripp is really good, but it's hard anyway. You have to really think about it. And keep in mind, he's connecting it back to the previous one. Right, anyway, a reading of Nietzsche as an immoralist or nihilist remains at the level of mere inversion, not acknowledging his insight that by conforming to the oppositional structure, we confirm its validity and its repressive hierarchizing power. Yeah, right. See, hierarchy means repression, right? Hierarchy means one thing got oppressed and also repressed by the other thing, right? By the one above it. Well, okay. But a reading of Nietzsche as the transvaluer of values. Now, what does it mean? There's many different theories about how to explain it. I admit I don't really know what it means. Transvaluation of all values. Okay, a reading of Nietzsche as the transvaluer of values locates the second movement in Nietzschean critique of morality. The second movement flows from the active imposition of new values, arising from a healthy will to power that has displaced the hierarchy of good-evil altogether. Yeah, that's back to the beginning. That's where Nietzsche begins with the will to power of the master, right? So in the beginning there was no hierarchy. So how can he say that's his second movement? Because it's back to that. Yeah, right, but yeah, I mean, okay, because right, to displace the opposition. That's the original thing he's talking about. People, when he originally says A over B, okay, so then he says the first movement, so we put B over A. Then the second movement, we displace the opposition, whatever that means, right? Does displace just mean A is B, or does it mean some other thing? Not only that. Okay, but then, and that's the second movement, right? Okay, but we displace it, right? Okay, the second movement, we displace the opposition. Okay, but now he's comparing it to this other issue about the will to power, right? He's comparing it, whereas in Nietzsche that might be a slightly other thing, right? But of course it's also related, right? Because Nietzsche's kind of strange because he's also kind of chaotic. He has these different aspects. It might be hard to fully put it together. but when he puts it in terms of the will to power. But the will to power thing begins with the master morality as this overflowing power, but later on the slaves react against it and they create this opposition. But actually Nietzsche did say good and bad. He did actually say the master is good and those guys are bad. But maybe that's already a later stage. Maybe in the beginning the master is just the overflowing overflowing power or energy. So then displacing it means, in some sense, to begin from this overflowing. Okay, what do you say? The second movement flows from the active imposition of new values rising from the healthy will to power. Okay, in rejecting the binary structure of moral relation, its transvaluation inaugurates a playful experimentation with values and a multiplication of perspectives that he labels Ausdeutung der Tat, active interpretation. In German it means interpretation of the deed. Tat, they would normally say T-A-T, I thought. I don't know why it's got T-H-A-T, but I would have thought T-A-T. But anyway, it means like a deed or action. So interpretation by action, or interpretation through action, or something like that. Bedeutung is meaning. B-E-D-E. Good translation, okay. The label is active interpretation. Okay, see, okay, yes, I see, okay. Schrift is really good. Schrift is actually, it's kind of hard. You might think it's easy, but if you really think about it, it's hard. The affirmation of perspectival multiplicity thus emerges as a life-enhancing alternative for those with the will to power sufficient to go beyond the reactive decadence of binary morality. Because the priests become decadent, the reactive decadence. The priests became decadent. Okay, later we look at the thing, but I'm afraid to look. Once you go into Nietzsche, it's easy to get lost with Nietzsche's different games, right? So I'm afraid to do that. Okay, but we should also the thing, reactive decadent. He said the priests become decadent because the slaves become priests also. Some of them are the priests of the new religion, Christianity, Hinduism, and the priests are decadent in some way. Okay, the outcome of this life-enhancing multiplicity sounds like Deleuze, also multiplicity. This life-enhancing multiplicity, as well as in Derrida, is a productive style of reading that does not really protect but opens up to do and talk with all the time. Okay, so we know that. Okay. The second movement falls from the active imposition of new values. But how do you really do that now? But how can we actually do that now? Do you guys know how to do that? Do you know how to actively impose new values? You should actually go back. I don't know how to do that. Teach me how to do that. See, I will be thinking about it, right? How to do that. Okay, there's some ambiguity in it for me, but I'm not sure. But maybe it's not an ambiguity. Because Nietzsche himself has different ways to explain the master slave. Okay, so the thing. Okay, there's a further similarity between Nietzsche's and Derrida's strategy. This confirms, because he's saying Nietzsche is kind of proto-Derrida, right? Basically attacking oppositional thinking and somehow displacing, but it's kind of ambiguous. What does it really mean to displace, right? To reorder, to revalue? What? Okay, so what would that mean? Okay, so now mind over body, body over mind, body over soul, woman over man. What would that mean to displace the whole opposition? Creating totally new values, like not about man and woman? Or man giving different values to man and woman? See, what would it actually mean? See, if I think about it. But when I read this before, I sort of, it seems all clear to me. And then today, when I think about it, I start to go crazy. Okay, it might make sense. Okay, there. Well, anyway, there's a further similarity between their strategy. This concerns the relation between the binary opposition and language question. Regarding the origin of both moral and epistemological, it means knowledge, right? Like our knowledge. Values like episteme in Foucault. Nietzsche writes that language will not get over its awkwardness and will continue to talk of opposites where there are only degrees and many subtleties of gradation. That's interesting. That he said that way. Beyond good and evil. Language will not get over its awkwardness. It's too clumsy. It's too awkward, right? Human language It's not refined enough. It's too crude, too rough, right? So language will always make these opposites, but actually it's just a subtle decrease. Okay, for this reason, as he said, we really ought to free ourselves from the seduction of words. Yes, that's close to Wittgenstein, what's called philosophy of language, 20th century analytic philosophy. The basic presupposition of metaphysics of language involves us in a rude fetishism. We fetishize words because we kind of worship the words in a way, and we are controlled by words, right? Okay, which will dichotomize our world into truth and appearance, cause and effect. So we'll get out there. Okay, the handout I gave you has some stuff about that. Okay, it is only owing to seduction of language and all the fundamental errors of reason petrified in language. Petrified. See, he's a brilliant writer, right? Nietzsche uses that image, right? Petrified. You know, like a petrified tree. It's like stone, right? A petrified tree. See, because he has many images, it's like anthropology, geology, right? Okay. It is only owing to the seduction of language and so on, and the errors of reason petrified in language. Like fossils or something, fossils. That we conceive and misconceive all effects as conditioned by something that causes effects by a subject. All effects are conceived and misconceived by a subject. But there is no such thing, there is no subject. There is no being behind doing, effecting, becoming. The doer is merely a fiction added to the deed. The deed is everything. That's very similar. Okay, we'll have Ray can come back. That's very similar to one of the ones in here. It might be one of the ones that I, case. No. Oh yeah, right. Oh yeah, that was on the bottom of page 60. That was one of the ones I gave you in a handout, which actually said page 60. To the mode of strength of the truth. Well, let's just look at that one anyway. At the end of that passage has the one he quoted. Okay, it says from the genealogy of morals, page 60. I had underlined before, it says, but there is no such substratum, there is no subject, right? Subject. There is no being, there is no self, right? No subject. Behind the doing, effecting, becoming the doer is just a fiction added to the deed is everything. In other words, Shakespeare in King Lear, or in Romeo and Juliet, or in Hamlet, Shakespeare said, ripeness is all. I forget which place. Ripeness is all. We've got being ready is all. Ripeness is all. To be ready is all. But anyway, that's not the same point. It's different points, so it's too good to mention. There is no being behind the doer. The doer is merely a fiction added to the deed. The deed is all. Because Shakespeare said, ripeness is all. I mean, to be ready is everything. But actually, it's not the same point, so why do I mention it? Okay, yeah. Okay, we could see that because he just gave you the internet. See, what about the whole passage, though? Yeah. Now I catch Swift on none of these points here. Swift is taking this one here, because I know you guys will be interested in the question of the soul pure act and what is subjectivity. Is there subjectivity? What is the subject? Okay, so see, what about the whole passage on page 60? To demand of strength. Okay, do you have that one, by the way? To demand of strength. Okay. Maybe we'll read that whole passage, and then I could actually find a couple of the other ones to look at it. But I want to still stay with the Swift thing a little longer, because and then mention more about Derrida also. Yeah, mention about Derrida.
Yeah.
That's still not number one. But I just watched it in case you are wondering about it. Because in my speech I'm always wearing the same shirt. It's because all of my other warm shirts, heavier shirts, I forgot to wash them. But yesterday it was warm and then I'm wearing the light shirt. And then today, gravity is very strange. Will that become warm again, by the way? Soon that will become warm again, right? Yeah. I'm eager to do something called Derrida on dissemination. I'm kind of eager to do that, but on the other hand, it's like a smorgasbord of delightful possibilities. And I just get so loving this stuff and I didn't know which way, right? So we will look at, just show you the thing. See, okay, just on page 60, the one in here, okay, because he just referred to that thing. Okay, in one way, Swift's book is good. His book is very good, but in another way, you would have to keep thinking about every point. And it's kind of jumping, and then you might not know the background in between, right? But you would probably sort of know that. But in one way, you can easily follow his book in one sense, right? Okay, now, the thing is, what? Okay, so we just quoted that thing about the subject. So Swift in his book on page 23, about the so the seduction of language, yes. Seduction of language, so partly because of language, we think that the subject, this is this whole power, like Lacan and all these guys, okay? The I. Okay, so before Lacan, they're already saying because we have I, right? I think before Lacan, people are aware, well, Nietzsche's aware of that. But who is it? Is Lacan the one who, anyway, Lacan is one of the ones who emphasized quite a lot. I think Roland Barthes also. Roland Barthes and Lacan, they don't like the word I, right? They put it, the subject, it's just the word I or something, right? So keep in mind that point. Is that what he sort of means? He could have been clearer here about that, right? But he's talking about language, and he's talking about how we got contricked by language, so we think that a subject, right? He maybe might have mentioned the point, the word I, like in Lacan. I subject or something. Okay, so in any case, and then he quoted that thing from from Nietzsche, that is only the action, there's no subject left behind. See, so language makes us think there's a subject, but actually, there's just the action. See, that's Nietzsche, that's his, that's where it's like the Lewis, and he's not like Lacan, right? Because basically it's a philosophy of action, right? So in that respect, it's like Deleuze and this kind of thing. And maybe Foucault's kind of weird for me. But with Deleuze, it's going to be action and kind of physics, and kind of force and action. And then with Lacan, I'm not sure Lacan is also weird for me. Because he's kind of interested in language and stuff, right? It's like the insane, it's like Derrida, both insane. Okay, so that's on page 60 here. Okay, if you have that handout. If you have that handout it says from the genealogy of laws, page 60, 61, from the genealogy of laws, and then on page 60 he said, but then I'll be tempted to go back. Oh, no. Okay, well, let's just go back one page for now. Okay, we just go back to page 59 for now. That will make sense. Okay, so this is from the genealogy of laws on page 59. In connection just suppose versus Jews. I recall the proposition Jews, that with the Jews, now see, he might be anti-Semitic, of course, he might be anti-Jewish, but he's also anti-Christian. So you cannot blame him too much for being anti-Jewish, because he might attack Christianity more than Judaism. Okay, I recall something like that. I recall the proposition that with the Jews there began the slave revolt immorality, because in the Bible, the Old Testament of the Bible, I guess, right? But that revolt which has a history of 2,000 years behind it, which we no longer see because it has been victorious. And it's one of Nietzsche's key points in genealogy of laws, right? Basically, Christianity won. Basically, in the West, right? In the West, we have already been kind of brainwashed by what are your what about Islam Jao? Speaking of totally brainwashed, what about Islam Jao? Okay, but anyway, and George Bush is a serious Christian, right? Fundamentalist Christian. Okay, anyway, speaking of oppositional thinking, right? Heaven and hell and all that stuff. Christians against Islam. Anyway, he thinks that Christianity kind of won, so we are already influenced by that, right? We are already, part of his point is there are no more masters, in one sense. We've all become slaves, we've all become Christians, there are no more masters, but then he wants to get back to that somehow, right? So to become the overman, that will be one way to explain it, right? Maybe too simple. So we have to get back to this thing. Okay, so that's the thing. Like he says, the slave revolt and morality begins from the English resentment, like revenge. You resent someone, jealousy, envy, jealousy, right? Resentment. But originally in French, it's like feeling again, right? So then what about that, right? Okay, the slave revolt begins from the ressentiment itself, becomes creative and gives birth to values. The ressentiment, because the slaves resent the warriors. like Achilles, kind of those warrior guys. This leaves guys resenting. Okay. Resentment gets rid of the resulting law of nature that are denied the true reaction that of deeds and compensate themselves with an imaginary revenge. True values, true ideas, see. So basically it's the philosophy of action, right? Basically saying what's important is action. What is sort of most real is action. And then values, ideas, and all that stuff, all nonsense, right? Ideology, right? All nonsense. See, compared to Marx, by the way. I mentioned Marx way back in the beginning, right? I mentioned Marx way back in the beginning. I mean, Marx has the force of production, right? The forces of production. It's like action, right? Forces of production are the substructure which are actually determining the ideological superstructure. Marx will sort of say the ideology is such kind of nonsense anyway, right? But what really determines it is the force of production. See, so that's a different thing, but you will see there's some connection now. Because he thinks all that stuff is just imaginary stuff, right? Actually, the early Marx, the German ideology. He sort of says philosophy, religion, morality, values, religion, philosophy, law, culture, it's all ideology. In some ways, it's all imaginary, because it's all grounded in the forces of production. And how did he say that? At some point he said it's kind of like an image of that. It's like a fantasy in some way. He has something like that. He said something like that. It's kind of imaginary in some way. See, that's where we had the imaginary revenge, right? The imaginary revenge of the ideas or values, right? Because they cannot act, right? So the key point was the warrior guys is action, right? They just fight, right? It's apes, right? It's ancient men. For every noble morality, every noble morality develops from a triumphant affirmation of itself. Slave morality from the outset says no to what is outside, what is different, what is not itself. This no is its creative deed. But Nietzsche wants to always say yes, right? But the lion said no, right? In the three democracies, the lion said no to his values. The child said yes. Okay, so what about that? Every noble morality, see, noble, right? He thinks nobility is the warrior stuff, right? Every noble morality goes from triumphant affirmation of itself, self-affirmation, an overflowing of yourself in a way. Slaves from the beginning say no to what is different. This no is its created deed. This inversion of the value positing I, E-Y-E. This inversion of the value positing I. This leads to direct one's view outward instead of back to oneself. Without the essence of ressentiment or resentment. In order to exist, slave morality always first needs a hostile external world. It needs, physiologically speaking, external stimuli in order to act on all. This action is fundamentally reaction. Okay, that's weird that he said that though. For some reason I thought of Lacan, but it's probably nothing like Lacan. Okay, this inversion of the value positing I, E-Y-E. This needs to look outward instead of back at yourself. It's resentment. Okay, the thing is, but someone will say, no, but Nietzsche says egomaniac, it's a selfish egomaniac, right? A selfish, childish egomaniac. And just look at yourself, right? That's not like narcissism, right? Primary narcissism in Freud. Primary narcissism, like Narcissus in the myth, right? Narcissus keeps looking at himself and then he falls in the sun. He drowns. You can easily question this in another way, okay? Okay, but anyway, this version, the need to direct, well, okay. Anyway, that's interesting. And by the way, Freud, in his essay Narcissism, I think Freud also said, actually, we must love ourselves, primary narcissism. We must love ourselves first before we can learn to love other people. I think he might say that. Now, see, how would you relate that to this stuff? Maybe not. That would be possible. Okay, then he said the reverse. Okay, now, he said the reverse is the case. Oh, I see, I got confused there. The reverse is the case with the noble mode of valuation. It acts and grows spontaneously It seeks its opposite only so as to affirm itself more gratefully and triumphantly. Its negative concept, low, common, bad, right, like I said. The other guys are the bad, right, the low. It's only a subsequently invented pale contrasting image in relation to its positive basic concept. Filled with life and passion through and through. We noble ones, we good, beautiful, happy ones. With you, we happy to you. There might be in some Shakespeare play. With you, we happy to you. Maybe the kings or something say that. Its negative concept, right, okay, that's interesting. Okay, isn't this kind of selfish, like egomaniac stuff? Childish egomaniac. The little baby thinks only that he exists, right? The little baby, okay, maybe that, maybe that. Okay, the noble valuation, this is to act and grow spontaneously. This is like little baby stuff, right? Okay, maybe not, maybe not. I didn't think about it before. Okay, it seeks its opposite only to affirm itself. And so on, right? Okay, anyway. Okay, when the noble mode of valuation blunders and sins against reality, it does so in respect to the sphere with which it is not sufficiently familiar. Against a real knowledge of which it has indeed inflexibly guarded itself. What? I don't know. I got confused. In some circumstances, it misunderstands the truth. It tries to have the common man of the lower orders. On the other hand, one should remember even supposedly the affect, the feeling, kind of feeling of contempt, of looking down, falsifies the image of that which it despises. Much less serious falsification than that permitted on the planet in effigy, like in a figuration. Why the submarine hated, okay, jump over that. You can think about that. I'm too lazy to think about it. The vengefulness of the infinite. The vengefulness of the infinite. Anyway, okay. There is indeed too much carelessness, too much taking lightly, too much looking away and impatience, involved in contempt, too much joyfulness, which is able to transform its object into real nonsense. Okay, well, okay, we'll jump over that. Okay, on page 60, near the top. Okay, page 60. But let us return. The problem of the outer origin of the good as conceived by the man of resentment. Demands its solution. Okay, now this is the thing like Shrift just talked about, right? Shrift said it's evil, okay? Okay, not we are the good master, these guys are bad, these low down guys. But rather from the slave's point of view, we are good, the masters are evil, right? Because they are other than us, or they control us, okay? Okay, the other origin of good, when they're slaves, okay? On page 59 is the master's conception of good, right? Which is basically themselves, right? And now it would be the slave's conception of good, which is different, right? Okay, the other origin of good as conceived by the slave. Okay, that lambs just like great birds of prey does not seem strange. It gives no ground for reproaching those birds of prey like eagles, like hawks, for eating lambs, right? And if the lambs say to themselves, those birds of prey are evil, whoever is least like a bird of prey, but rather like its opposite, a lamb, he will be good. That's slave morality, right? There is no reason to find fault with this institution of an idea, except perhaps that the birds of prey might do it ironically and say, we don't like them at all, those good little lambs. So you kind of joke it. We even love them. Nothing is more tasty than they tend to that. You kind of joke it, right? Because the masters are the warrior guys. They can easily kill the priests or whatever, or the slave guys, the common people. Right? The warrior guys can easily kill them. Right? They wouldn't eat them, but they can kill them. Maybe they also eat them. We all just like those nice little delicious names. It's kind of like joke. Okay, to the man of strength, that it should not express itself as to throw down. It desires to become master. The English exchange there. Not express itself as really a desire. Maybe they left out the word a desire, I'm not sure. Except for there's a desire to throw down. A desire to become master, a thirst for enemies, resistance, power, is just as absurd as to demand of weakness that it should express itself as strength. See, so he's basically beginning from strength and weakness, right? Okay, so basically Deleuze will emphasize basically chapter 2 of the Liz's book. Basically, Nietzsche is active and reactive forces, right? Okay, Deleuze's view, basically, Nietzsche's main idea, basically, the world is will to power. What is will to power? Forces. The world is an interplay between active and reactive forces, right? Whatever that means, right? Okay, that has many meanings. One meaning of it is this. But then Foucault, in a sense, Marx and maybe Foucault, in a sense, are kind of limited to this aspect of it anyway, right? But Deleuze is like physics. I mean, Nietzsche is also physics, right? It's not only political power, right? Okay, but you might think that Nietzsche is only political power, but in another way, he's interested in physics and that kind of stuff, right? As we would see in Eternal Return. Okay, now, so the thing is, Deleuze is kind of also physics anyway. It's not only political power. Okay, so the thing is, anyway, okay, so this is kind of like the world as will to power. What is will to power? Strength against weakness. Active force against reactive force. Okay, but that's also in physics and everything, the universe, right? And then one aspect of it will be this, human society, right? Okay, so anyway, that's the thing. Okay, quantum of force, so quantum. See, quantum is a term in physics, actually. A quantum of force, a quantity of force, is equivalent to a quantum of drive. Drive is in physics, drive is in psychology. Psychological drive theory, right, in psychology. The hunger drive, the sleep drive, the sex drive in psychology. A quantum of force, a quantity of force is equivalent to a quantity of drive, will, effect. Why effect? Why not affect? More, it is nothing other. The quantity of force is nothing other than precisely this very driving, this willing, this effecting. In this case, effecting means causing. You could also say affecting. It's almost the same thing. Effecting means kind of like causing it to happen, causing something to happen. But the quantity of force is nothing other than this very driving, and so on. And only owing to the seduction of language, and so on, which misconceives all effects as conditioned by something that causes those effects, namely by a subject. Only because of that seduction of language can it seem otherwise. Okay. The quantity of force is just the same as the actual force, the driving force itself. The quantity of the force is actually just the force, the moving force. It's kind of like physics. But language tricks us, so we think that there's a subject. We think that everything happens because of a subject. Well, that's a little bit confusing because he talks about quantity, kind of jumps there. But anyway, because we think it's subject-object. So we think one thing pushes the other thing or something. Or we push something, right, in physics. We push it, I push it, right, I move it, right. But actually that's just the moving, right. There is no I, there is no object, it's just the moving. Like in the Matrix, you become the spoon. So, the Matrix moving and the Matrix 1 moving. The little boy, it's like you see a Chinese boy, possibly something like that. He possibly will become the Buddhist master. Like in the Matrix, number 1, high vision movie. In the oracle, you go to the oracle, the little boy says you must become the spoon or something. And then you bend the spoon. It's Buddhism. It's popular. You become the spoon. Okay, so it's just the action, right? Anyway, okay, so it's only because language that we think there's a self. We think that it's I as a self. Right. But just as the popular mind separates the lightning from its flash and takes the flash as an action for the operation of something, a subject can also be the thing underneath, right? The thing called lightning. But Nietzsche would say, actually, the flash is not the effect of a thing called lightning. Rather, there is just this thing like a force. There's no thing, it's just this action, right? See, actually it's physics, right? So actually they will compare Nietzsche to Buddhism, right? They will compare Nietzsche and this kind of stuff. Actually Hume, Nietzsche, and also Heidegger and stuff. They will compare to something in Buddhism. Okay, in Buddhism, is it the same thing? There might not be the subject and the object, right? They might just be the me, or depending on that, maybe Zen Buddhism or some kind of Buddhism. It sounds like it could be a Buddhist thing, right? Buddhist thing. There's no thing. Okay, so it's just action means need is name, means. Enlightening is just a word, right? And cause and effect thing is just a word, right? It's based on a concept, on the language. Okay, so the thing to Buddhism is also physics, actually, right? In one sense. In a sense, Buddhism is kind of like physics, right? It's not just like social philosophy or something. Okay, so the thing is, the popular morality. What? Oh, sorry, I lost my mind there. Sorry. So in the same way, popular morality separates strength from expressions of strength, as if there were a neutral thing behind the strong men, which was strength, that it should not be a desire to overcome. Okay, people think popular morality thinks strength is not a desire to overcome, a desire free to express strength or not to do so. But Nietzsche thinks it is that, right? Nietzsche thinks there is just desire, there is just force, right? Like that, right? Desire free to express strength. Okay, there is just that. But there is no such thing underneath it. There is no being behind doing, effect, and becoming. The doer is the fiction, attitude, the deed is everything. The popular mind doubles the deed. When the popular mind sees the lightning flash, it is the deed of a deed. Huh? Indeed, is that true? Indeed. Is that true indeed? Oh. The popular mind is the deed. Deed means action. Okay, Tat in German. T-H-A-T. Why did you say the mind is the action of the action? The deed is everything. I don't know. Okay, anyway. Posits. Okay, the mind is the deed of the deed. The mind posits the same event first as cause, then a second time as the effect. Interesting. Scientists do know better when they say force moves, force causes. All its coolness, see, physics is based on force, by the way. Newton's physics, I used to study this. It's the fundamental principle is force. F equals ma. Force is mass times acceleration. F equals ma. In Newton's physics from the 1600s. But then Einstein is based on that, but then he develops also, yeah, he's basing on that. The thing is based on force. Speed is a kind of force, right? Speed and all that stuff. Okay, so the thing is, I lost my mind there. Shit. Okay, scientists do know better when they say force moves, force causes. They won't say that. Physics won't say that. And the like. All its coolness, its freedom from emotion, I think our science still lies under the misleading influence of language, okay, maybe, and has not disposed of the subject. The atom, for example, is also like this subject. It's a fantasy. Yeah, now in physics they might say the atom is a kind of fantasy. It's just these different particles, it's just energy. The Kantian thing in itself is fantasy. I wonder if the submerged, darkly glowing emotions of revenge and hatred exploit this belief for their own ends. So they exploit the belief in the subject and in the thing, in the object. If the revengeful slaves exploit this kind of belief for their own ends and maintain no belief more ardent than the belief that the strong man is free to be weak, and the bird of prey to be a lamb, how do he jump to that? For thus they gain the right to make the bird of prey accountable for being a bird of prey. He kind of slightly jumps to that. But okay, maybe not, it might make sense. Nietzsche's kind of brilliant, he's kind of slightly insane. Okay, the thing is Nietzsche because, yeah, I mean, it's very good, but when you read Nietzsche, you know it's really good, but in one way it's kind of strangely jumping, or the last part of it slightly confused with that. What he said, the slaves will say that, sometimes it's kind of ironic and kind of playfulness. The slaves will say that the master guys are free to become slaves. I mean, that's interesting, but I'm not sure if that really follows from the previous thing. Okay, but maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. And Nietzsche's very smart. Okay, the thing is, Nietzsche's very smart in one way, Schrift is very smart in another way. It's kind of like opposite of. That Schrift will be very logical and go to the thing, but then you might be confused because we didn't know all the things. Okay, so that I went off on a tangent, but that's good though, right? That part is pretty good, right? So I went off on that thing, but that was, he just quoted from the end of that passage, right? Okay, on page 23, so that was pretty good to do like that. Okay, then what you keep talking about, I want to go to this very last thing. I want to give you some handouts from very last. Okay, it's going to go on. Okay, Schrift on the bottom of 23. Schrift on the bottom of page 23 in his 50 book. And Schrift said, Nietzsche's awareness of language, seduces us to a faith and all sorts of medical presupposition leads him to call for a deconstruction of grammatical habits. Okay, so that will easily follow from it. Okay. Okay, because language seduces and tricks us. Okay. Okay, this called motivates much of this essay. The first essay in genealogy of law, which suggests the following question in order to advance historical studies of morality. What light does linguistics, and especially the study of etymology, throw on the history of the evolution of moral concepts? Right. I don't think I gave you that one, did I? In here? I'm not sure what I meant. Anyway, okay. Well, this is the beginning of genealogy of law. Okay. Okay, what light does etymology, because Nietzsche wants to do etymology. That's the point. He wants etymology. Okay. Okay. What light does linguistics, especially the study of etymology, okay, the meaning of words, and the history, the changing meaning of words, throw on the history of the evolution of one concept. Okay, he wants to do that, right? To study that. Okay. Elsewhere, he urges us not to forget that language is a mere semiotic, a simplified, falsified, totally created science system. It's hard to say etymology, because language tricks us. Okay, so the original meaning of a word might be different from its meaning now, right? And also the original meaning of the word might also trick us in another way, right? I'm not sure. It's mainly because the meaning changes, though. Okay, anyway, language is a semiotic. Language is a simplified, falsified, humanly created science system. To this semiotic, we bring the critical tools of genealogy. We must decipher linguistic concepts as symptoms of the forces that have achieved mastery and each of these grammatical wonders. Okay. So Nietzsche's genealogy is kind of linguistic more. Now, what about Foucault epistemes? I don't think Foucault is so far to the linguistic stuff. Foucault is more the history of science, right? The history of changing epistemes and stuff. History of mental hospitals. Foucault is interested in the history of mental hospitals. Like that. So the thing was, did he himself end up in them? No, he didn't. But he died in some strange way. Did he die in San Francisco, by the way? I know they say Foucault, who finally was gay, he was playing with maybe young men in San Francisco, in bars. Did Foucault die of AIDS, by the way? He might have died of AIDS. Anyway, I don't mean that in any way to make fun of him. I shouldn't joke. I just said he's interested in the history of mental hospitals. That's kind of fun. I didn't mean that as a negative thing. Okay, now. Okay, so Nietzsche's genealogy is more kind of linguistics, right? And maybe Foucault is more towards like history, basically. What we normally think is history, right? Okay, then what? Okay, then he said, should philosophers be permitted to rise above faith and grammar, Nietzsche asks. That's sort of funny, right? If they rise above this faith and subjected to rigorous genealogical scrutiny, they will discover even the belief in God to be an article of faith derived from a linguistic situation. So what else is the cosmological argument of the philosophy? Aquinas. 中国时代 Okay, Aquinas. Cosmological argument. Okay, the universe must have a creator. Okay, the universe is so perfect, right? Everything is so perfect, and human body, human mind, or brain, or human mind is so complicated. The universe is too complicated. There must be a creator who's even more intelligent. Otherwise, how could there be the human mind and all this stuff? How could such complex things, including human body, human mind, have just been created by chance or something? There must be a creator more intelligent who created it. Okay, personally, I don't believe that now. But in philosophy, no. But I mean, some philosopher will agree with that argument. Many philosophers will also say that argument is not really logical, right? Or you don't have to agree with that argument, right? You can still say the very complicated things in nature, including the human brain or the human mind, actually can just evolve purely by chance, or through Darwinian theory. Darwinian has a complicated theory. It's hardly by chance. Okay, but anyway, I think that's a cosmological argument. I think so, I'm not sure. But we said we must regard, okay, that's Aquinas in 1200 AD. Okay, so what else is that argument but a linguistic inference from deed to doer? Oh, I see, right. Right, exactly. Because the human beings evolve. Okay, the world is very complicated, trees and all this stuff, beautiful trees, nature, everything, beautiful, complicated. For example, human body, human mind, so complicated. So there must be something which caused that, a deed to do it. Now God is the doer, right? There must be God who created that, who did the deed. But Darwin would say, no, it's just the deed which is the evolution of the process, right? You don't need the doer back behind who made that. It's just a gradual process, like the deed, the action of the process, right? Okay, anyway. Okay, so anyway, maybe like that. Now, see, in some way, this stuff is like Darwin, but it's also like history as a contingent thing. Okay, so, well, anyway, okay. And how else would Nietzsche confess that he fears we will not get rid of God as long as we believe in grammar? Okay, the death of God and deconstruction of divine authority are prerequisites for transformation of values. So too are based on the authority of language must be suspended if a change in animation in being is to be possible. Nietzsche's genealogical suspicion concerning the inference from deed to doer, such as there must be God who created the world, lays the ground for another linkage between his thinking and Derrida. Okay, finally, now will we get back? Actually, we didn't really talk about Derrida. What? Where's Derrida? Lays the ground for another link between his thinking and Derrida's concerning deconstruction of authority. Okay. Now, the thing is, okay, I do have one hand up from Derrida's dissemination. Now, he is going to mention this, the pharmacy, the pharmacon. Shit, I'm too slow. Damn it, why am I too slow? Didn't he mention the pharmacy, the pharmacon? Was that already in the previous part? Oh shit, that was in the previous part. Okay, in the previous part he mentions Derrida, the pharmacy, Plato's pharmacy. That's on dissemination. So it's in the previous part, but I thought this part would be more clear though, in some way. Because I want to go to the genealogy. Okay. I did not teach such a course, it would be impossible. Because, how would you limit it, right? Okay, so the thing is, there's infinite. It's like infinite things, right? Infinity. Okay, so, maybe do this part, and then I give you that, and then the beginning of the thing, and I give you that. Okay, deconstructing authoritarian subject. Okay. This question of authority and its legitimation is the central issue in Nietzsche, and so on. Whether he's dismantling the authority of like Christianity or God, or excising, cutting up the hidden metaphysical authority within language, his refusal to legitimate any figure of authority is constant. This holds for his own authority as a writer. Now, this is the problem in style. Okay, his own authority as a writer or the author, right? The authority of the prophets or the authority of the overman. As he says, in the presence of morality, as in the face of any authority, one is not allowed to think. Far that to express any opinion, here one has to obey. Now, I wrote one note in pencil there about evil thinking, evil prejudice. I wrote the marginal note, evil foreigner prejudice, about East Asian educational system and stuff like that. East Asian culture, especially educational system. Okay, that it might be the evil, distorted foreigner prejudice stuff. So it's not maybe too much. Okay, but you will maybe think about that point, though, right? You will maybe think about that point. I mean, it's possible, but maybe the Americans are also not allowed to think in some way, right? Okay, maybe authority is everywhere, but Westerners will certainly say Chinese and Japanese and so on. East Asian culture has a lot of authority in it, right? There is quite a lot of emphasis on authority. Also in the educational system right now. Okay, so he says, what did he say? He said, right, okay. As remarks, moral authority, There's also a lot of more emphasis on morality in Chinese philosophy. In the presence of morality, as in the face of any authority. See, morality is a kind of authority, right? One is not allowed to think further to express opinion. Here we must only obey. As long as the world has existed, no authority has yet been willing to let itself become the object of critique. How can he say that? Is that true? I mean, how can he say that? Never willingly. Never willing to. Maybe. Because authority demands obedience, a philosophy of the future will necessitate a critique of authority. If values are to be transvalued, what does that mean? You give a new value to every value. So good no longer means good, but then what value do you give it? Good now means like what? So that's weird. Bad now means sin. So what does sin mean though? Let's see, what does it mean to give it your value? See, I don't know what does it mean. Okay, so the thing is, See, philosophers, we will often torture ourselves thinking about that stuff. Okay, so, anyway, right, okay, if values, if we transvalue values, we must undermine obedience to the previous values. Yeah, you cannot just wipe away everything, maybe, right? Okay, the whole project of genealogy directs itself toward deconstructing the foundations of the dominant values of modernity, which is to say, the project of transvaluation of values presupposes the delegitimation of existing moral authority. Okay, that part will be quite clear. This part seems much easier than the previous part to me. Okay, well, not sufficiently attended to in Nietzsche's right, the question of authority is an essential question. Okay, of course, trans thinking. Here as elsewhere we see Nietzsche's ideas developed in Derrida's thought on literary authority. Right, okay. We have one point about deconstruction in Derrida, right? One of the points is the author actually doesn't know what is his own meaning, right? Because when you do the deconstructive reading, you show the meaning that kind of against what the author thinks, even, right? Or kind of the unconscious in a way, that the author can suppress it, or even against what he thought. So, of course, but I mean, Barthes had, Roland Barthes already had death of the author. Roland Barthes already had the essay Death of an Author before Derrida, basically, isn't it? At the same time as Derrida. Okay, Roland Barthes has the famous essay called Death of the Author. It might be in the image music text, in the book called Image Music Text, maybe. In his famous essay Death of the Author, but when is that from? Is that from, say, 1950, I believe? Or is that from later, like 1960? Maybe 1960, but before Derrida. Because Derrida doesn't really start writing until late 1960s, right? 67, 68. I think it's before that, but maybe I'm wrong now. But anyway, they often say Barthes is the precursor of Derrida, right? Because they often say Barthes already has these ideas in, to some degree, right? But it's hard to say that. But actually, Lacan might be the precursor of Derrida. Because Lacan is writing stuff in the 50s, and he's talking about signifiers, and all this stuff in the 50s. But of course, Saussure, Saussure is back behind. Saussure is way back before 1920 or something, 1915 or 1920. His lecture of signifiers, signs, and the signifier points to the signifier. Okay, anyway, Roland Barthes' Death of the Author, of course, he just said everything as text, right? There's text, but there's different texts. And then there is no new text. One of Barthes' main points, right? There is no new text. Everything in a sense has already been said anyway. There's no new thought. There's no new idea. So there's all just these texts. So the author just is rearranging old texts in a way. The author does not really create a new text. He just simply rearranges the old text because in a way the author is invited to play. In a certain way, with Derrida will make that more clear. We are within the text in a way. Because there's nothing outside of the text, and actually we are textual and all this stuff. But that may be more clear in Derrida than in Barthes. But it's sort of like the author is also inside the text. But anyway, in any case, the author is just rearranging the old text. He's not really creating. So he has no authority. He has no power. He has no authority like that idea, like to create it, like the romantic idea. Because he is just within the whole thing and he's rearranging it. Okay, but then Foucault also has an essay, but I forgot what he said. Okay, Foucault, quite an author. Okay, but what did he actually say though? I forgot. Foucault is something similar, but it's something different, but he doesn't have power. The author has no power. Oh, because Foucault is talking about history also though. Because history, like Liang Sunjie is also interested in. Okay, Liang Sunjie 说，他说这个自愿。Liang Sunjie 说，自愿。Liang Sunjie, Liang Sunjie said that he told me that Chaucer, okay, in the time of Chaucer, like 14th century, in that time there's not such a clear idea of the author, right? Because Foucault will be more that kind of thing, like history also. Because why in the time of Chaucer? Because they emphasized the text more, not the author. Was that the point? That might be the point. Because they don't give such a power to authors, right? Because they might have already done the work. Liang Sunjie said they're already postmodern anyway. Back to like Middle Ages or Renaissance, right? They're already postmodern. They already know that it's just text anyway. And then then later, and they give priority to the text, I think. But then later on, Romanticism, the author, the genius author, right? Maybe see, and now we are back to the thing. Okay, Foucault might be one again, I forget. Foucault has different points. What does he say? What did Foucault talk about?
Focus is on the function of the author.
Right, the function, right. So what did he say about that? I forgot. The function of the author, but I forgot what he said about it. I did actually read that. I read that once or twice. I even taught that, let's say. But, yeah, but so the function of the author, because, he talks about the function of the author, but I forget what he says about. But he clearly thinks, what is an author? He's kind of questioning what it is. It's not so clear like Rock that there's no author. It's one of he's kind of putting in question, right? What is an author? Right? Putting in question. Yeah, but I think in a certain way it might fit to that thing like young Christians. In the earlier in history there actually was no author. I mean, they didn't emphasize the author as much. Foucault in some way might also fit to that. Because he is also Mr. History. Foucault is Mr. History, but he also likes history. Which brought to what and talk about history. See, so it's in the book, they were just a separate kind of mind. Anyway, keep in mind that Foucault has an essay, and Barnes has this essay. Oh yeah, right, here they mentioned Foucault, right? Okay, just to start. What did he say on page 25? Okay, the question of authority has been a central question. Here we see Nietzsche's ideas are developed in Derrida's literary authority and its relation to the deconstruction of this subject. Because we are textual in some way. Because basically one way to look at Derrida, I mean Derrida is so complicated, so anything you will say is like to simplify it, right? Okay, but one of the simplifying cliches, right? The simplifying cliche about Derrida. Okay, we are textual. The subject is also textual. We are a difference. Text is difference. Text is signifier. Text is difference. Language is difference. We are language. We are text. We are this difference. We are deferred from ourselves. So we are already within the text and all this stuff. Because the text itself is the difference, right? The play of difference. Meaning as difference. Meaning as a difference. Okay, so the text itself is the self-difference of meaning. But we ourselves are also a self-difference of meaning, right? See, but then on the other side you got Lacan and we are split, right? Lacan. Yeah, but see, okay, but actually Lacan is before Derrida. See, I didn't really study Lacan. Lacan is already writing stuff in the 1950s. And he talks about the subject, but it's just the word I, because he wanted the ideas, the word I. But okay, Lacan has the thing, okay, the mirror stage and we are split from ourselves. We are kind of split, right? But will Lacan emphasize we are a difference in meaning? We are the self-difference of meaning. He won't so much focus on meaning though, right? Is that true? But Derrida, everything is about meaning. Okay, so that point I'm not sure about Lacan. But he's aware of the problem of meaning on Lacan. Desire is a lack. We have desire is a lack. Desire, right? That's one of the points, by the way. Desire, okay, Lacan, desire is lack. But Nietzsche, Deleuze, positive desire, right? You guys know that, of course, right? Yeah, that's I meant to mention that just before we look at the thing in that, the power, the action, right? Because Nietzsche, Deleuze, see, that's the thing that I sort of like in Nietzsche and Deleuze, it's this kind of action thing. Okay, Nietzsche and Deleuze, positive desire is a force, right? Because desire is force, desire is will to power, right? Will to power, so positive desire is a force. Okay, but whereas Lacan desire as lack, coming from Freud, desire as lack.
It's the mental.
Oh, the mental.